We're going to be talking about story time with Dan, how to write great stories that paint a picture in your prospect's mind and make them whip out their wallets afterwards. So this is really, this is not a system, this is a skill. So what I've done here, take a look at the Modern Day Copy group. See here where I put post some of your copy here that is storytelling. So what I want you to do is grab a paragraph or two, grab some of your copy. It could be ad, it could be email, doesn't matter. And go ahead and paste that in there. And then I'll teach this part, and then I'll look at some of the stuff you guys have posted, and I'll critique it and show you, okay? So that said, story time. So here's how this works. If you are telling a story, when you come to the part where you tell a story, you have to understand that good storytelling, there is really one goal, and that is simply this: to make the person reading the story feel like they're in the story. They like they're there. Okay, so if I were to say to you, let's say I was talking about the time that I did my first webinar and I made $48,000 my first time on a webinar. If I said to you, whether typing, whether talking, doesn't matter. If I said, I remember the first time I did a webinar. I was working with my friend Billy, and we did our first webinar, and he was moderating the comments and helping me out. I was doing the slides, and I didn't think I was going to make any sales that day, or my goal was to make 10 sales, but lo and behold, we ended up making 48 sales, and we did $48,000 our first webinar. And then we did another webinar, and we made, $52,000. And that was really great. And that's when I realized that this was a real business that I could make real money from. And so I made it my life's work to become good at this. And that's why I decided to share this book with you or whatever. And if you buy it, it shows you all my secrets for doing webinars. That's okay storytelling. It's okay, but it's not great. So now let's look at that same story, but done well. So, and again, I'm just telling the story part. We're not talking about the call to action. Well, I'll do the whole thing so that it makes sense in context. So, identifying pattern interrupt would be something like, I did $48,000. And again, if you can do this in an email, you can't do this on Facebook ad. So this would be for an email. I did $48,000 my first webinar and realized it was not the proper way to do things. What? I just did 48 grand, or I did 48 grand on my first webinar, but immediately found a better way. Somebody like, wait a minute, you did 48 grand your first webinar, but then you immediately found a better way. What? They got to read it now, right? All right. So now we begin the story. Now I've earned the right to take some time to paint a picture, right? Now I've earned the right to say it was a dark, cold night. All right, so here we go. And this is off the top of my head. This happened. This is a true story, so that's why it's easy to tell. But here we go. So I would start with something like, I was sweating so bad that the keys in my keyboard were sticking. It was actually kind of gross. I was so nervous about this webinar I had coming up that as I pressed the keys, they were literally wet, as if I had just gotten out of a swimming pool. I looked over at my friend Billy, who was there helping me out with comment moderation, and I could see the look in his eyes. It was that look of, does this guy really know what he's doing? He's paying me, and I'm helping him with this thing, but is he really going to make money for this? Am I really going to have a job next week? All I could do was look at my friend thinking, he doesn't have any faith. And to be quite honest with you, neither did I. My goal was to make 10 sales on this webinar. And if I made 10 sales, I would be pretty darn happy. But unfortunately, I just didn't have the faith. And so as I sat there a couple hours before the webinar, all I could do was sweat all over my keyboard. And I looked over at my phone and it said 11:59, 12, 12:01, 12:02, and it slowly counted down toward the moment of truth. And then I went live. I did my thing. I did all the things I thought would work. And it came time to end the broadcast. I clicked end broadcast and literally slipped across my seat, almost falling onto the floor, just to click and open a new browser to see how many sales we had done. And when I looked at that Stripe account, I expected to see maybe 8, 9, hopefully 10 sales. But that's not what I saw. In fact, what I saw caused my heart to drop. It felt like all the blood had rushed out of my head and spilled all over the floor like some sort of horror movie. But that was because I realized what I had actually done. As I stared at that dashboard, it didn't say 8, it didn't say 9, it didn't say 10. It said 48. That's right. I did $48,000 and I couldn't believe it. That moment, I called my father on the phone. I used to work with my dad at Pizza Hut for 7 years. And I wasn't so much excited that I made the money. I was excited that I could tell my dad. And I said, Dad, you got to come here right now. Don't ask why. Just drive down here. So he drives down. He gets there. I turn the computer around. I say, look at that number. He says, okay, it's $48,000. What am I looking at? I said, that's how much money I made in the past 2 hours. And the look on his face was so unbelievable. It was almost as if the scene I just described with blood all over the floor was actually what he was looking at. He could not believe it. We immediately went to the bar next door and celebrated. We drank beer. We smoked cigars. We celebrated. But why? It wasn't because I made $48,000. It was because I knew that if I could do it once, I could do it again, and that my life had changed forever. So we did the webinar again. A week later, we did $52,000. It was amazing, but it was also very tiring. And I realized that, yes, I could do this over and over again, but I would have no life. I had to figure out a better way. And so while I was figuring it out, I decided, you know what? I need a break. I need to study. I need to figure this out. So I made a plan. I decided I would take the replay of the last webinar we did. I'd put it in a funnel, and I would run traffic to it automated. Yeah, I won't make as much money as doing a live webinar, but I'd make some, and I'd still have some revenue coming in while I gathered my strength to do the next big live webinar. But then something strange happened. At the end of that month, when I logged into that same Stripe dashboard, it said $150,000. You see, I wasn't converting at nearly as high of a rate. I wasn't making 50 grand a day, but I was slowly trickling in sales day after day, hour after hour, in the morning, in the afternoon, at night while I was sleeping. And at the end of the month, I had made $150,000 as opposed to the 100 I made before. And I didn't have to be anywhere. I didn't have to be on a live. I didn't have to prepare. I didn't have to do anything. The money just rolled in automatically. And that's when I realized that automating a sales presentation is much more powerful than doing one live, because I can't be everywhere all at the same time. And so I made it my life's work to figure out how to be the best in the world at automating sales. And that's why I've put together this 50-minute training on exactly how I did it. If you'd like to sign up, click here, blah, blah, blah. So now you might say, well, Dan, that was really long. Well, yeah, that particular one was long. I could shorten it. I could make it longer. But the point is, I painted a picture. So if I say I was sitting down and I was nervous, No, that's not enough. But write down all the weird things that you think of when you're in certain situations. Like, I've literally had my hands sweat so much that as I was typing, they were sliding across the keyboard. I was so nervous. Like, they would slide across the keyboard and there'd be gunk. It was disgusting. There'd be gunk stuck in the keyboard. I've had to buy, but I haven't felt nervous lately because I know what I'm doing now. But, or I've literally saw something good, like that $48,000, and it was so unbelievable that I literally had the same feeling as seeing somebody get hit by a truck. Like, the blood just drained from me, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, what? And so by describing that feeling, you now bring them into that world. It's like they're sitting there at the table, okay? Because you're describing bodily reactions, visions. I woke up in the morning versus all I can remember is the light blasting me in the face, the sun burning my eyeballs. You see, I forgot to close the drapes the night before. It was 7 a.m. and the sun was blasting into my apartment. I meant to get 3 more hours of sleep so I could prepare for my live webinar. But that stupid mistake cost me that. Once I wake up, I can't go back to sleep. I stumbled out of bed, moving my arm like the mummy searching for my cup of coffee, versus I went and got a cup of coffee. Like, how many times have you guys woken up? For those of you that need coffee, you wake up and you kind of like, you literally move like the freaking mummy because you're like you're trying to just be like. Like, that's how a mummy would drink a cup of coffee, right? So say that. Have you ever seen The Mummy? Well, that's how I was drinking my cup of coffee. Oh. All right? Like, because people, they can visually and they can feel that. All right? So let me see if I can go through some copy here that maybe you guys have posted and give a critique of painting a picture, right? You want to paint the picture. Why is Edgar Allan Poe considered one of the greatest poets of all time and greatest writers of all time? Because he knew how to paint a picture, right? He would take a page to describe a door. Like, oh, the you could see the spiraling wood, drifting down the door as if there were thousands of cyclones all crunched together. And I mean, that's a little long, but you get my point. You visually paint the story, not tell the story. You paint the story. All right. So let me see what we got here. All right. So, Kevin. What's up, Kevin? Well, this is unfair because Kevin's one of my copywriters. All right. It's all right, Kevin. Oh, you bought? Really? So Kevin wrote a lot of the copy for this offer. In fact, he wrote all the emails. And you bought your own offer? Not your offer, but you bought the offer you worked on. I would have given it to you for free. Jeez. All right, Kevin. So you can see the video or the desktop. Okay. So if you're an entrepreneur, chances are you've encountered painful situations in life. All right. I will come back to your identifying pattern interrupt, Kevin, because I got to see what this is actually offering, and then I can come back to that. So, all right. Let me tell, by the way, Gary, can you close the sun shining in my face. Let me tell you something about pain. So here's another thing we do. Most of the time I use ... because ... or I use exclamation point. I don't use a period much because it's just better to use ... It makes them read the next thing. Anyway, let me tell you something about pain. The quicker you can self-soothe is directly correlated to how successful you will be in life. The quicker you can self-soothe is directly. Pay close attention to what I have to say in this email because I will show you how to quickly recover from pain and self-soothe. It was my birthday and I sat there on the couch anxiously waiting. 5:30 came, nothing. 7:30 came, nothing. So this part is good. I like this part. for this part, I might say something like, instead of it was my birthday and I sat there on the couch anxiously waiting, I might say something like, it was my birthday and for some reason I was digging a hole into my knees. I was so anxious, I was scratching my knees and I could feel myself ripping my skin. Now that's nervous, ... 5:30 came, nothing. 7 came, nothing. 8 came, nothing. I might do something a little bit more like that. I got to read the whole thing and then read it again. But we had a landline in our house at that time, and I sat there waiting for the phone to ring, but there was not a single phone call. My dad had just gotten out of prison. So see this right here? This, I feel like this should be more at the beginning, but let me read the whole thing. My dad just had gotten out of prison, and for that birthday, he promised he would drive down and take me out to dinner. See, this right here is really great for the beginning of this. This is high drama. So normally after you do the identifying pattern interrupt, you want to start with high drama, right? So like you start with, let me tell you something about pain. But if we start with, my dad just got out of prison and he promised he would take me out to dinner for my birthday, dad is a little bit more high drama. So let me read the whole thing. When you're a kid, you have a lot of hope. So no matter what time it was, I still believe he was coming. Oh, this is good. He was just running late. I remember feeling super sad. I felt abandoned. My mom came home at midnight from work and found me, just laying there in the same spot on the couch, fast asleep. This is good. The reason I'm telling you this story is because life will throw you tremendous blows at you. It could be a betrayal of a family member or friend. It could be a sickness or death. And this next part is important, so pay close attention. I would use ... here. How those events affect you depends on how you perceive them. If I took my situation with my dad as it was, then my life would be attached to that pain. The story I would tell myself would be, yeah, I'm sad. My dad doesn't care about me. But if I perceive that situation differently and instead switch it up, then my new story is, life is like a puzzle I was handed, and this piece was just taken out. Now it's my job to find a new puzzle piece to replace it. When I look at sucky situations like that, my life becomes an adventure, and for that, I'm grateful. So the biggest takeaway here is that you can either be paralyzed by what life gave you, or you can accept the cards that were dealt for you. So it's up to you to recreate those cards. That's how you recover from fast from pain. Hope that was helpful. Talk soon. So there's no call to action. So here's an example. So it's up to you to recreate those cards, right? So I instead might say, because actually this is something my father told me, he says sometimes you just got to play the hand you were dealt, right? So sometimes you just got to play the hand you were dealt. And if you get dealt a bad hand, you play it the best you can and you wait for the dealer to deal you the next hand, right? Because think about it, right? You're saying you can accept that cards weren't dealt for you, so it's up to you to recreate those cards. There's nothing about that paints, that puts them in the moment. But if you say something like, when you look up at the dealer and you look down at your cards and you see that the hand you were dealt is bad, you simply have to play that hand to the best of your ability and wait for the next hand, right? So now I'm describing me at a table. I'm describing the action of getting the cards in my hand, looking at the cards, looking at the dealer, getting dealt a bad hand, waiting for the next hand. That is a visual picture that's been painted that we all can relate to. How many people have played poker? Almost everybody, right? So you know that you get a set of cards, you look at them, they suck, you play it the best of your ability, then you wait for the next hand. Whereas this is more just factual stating. You can accept the cards that weren't dealt for you, so it's up to you to recreate those cards. So they're just stating that instead of painting the picture. So like just that one sentence right there, I would do that differently. But up here, I would say something like, so like, I don't know what you're selling here, but let's say it is a personal development course for entrepreneurs. Then if you're an entrepreneur, chances are you've encountered painful situations like the one below, ... Now, or painful situations in life like the one below. Now what did they sign up for? Did they sign up for an email list about dealing with pain or personal development or mindset or something like that? in entrepreneurship? If yes, then this first sentence makes sense. If not, then it's just BS. Okay. So how I would maybe do this for my offer, I don't know who you're writing this copy for, but let's say it was my offer. I would say, if you sell online courses and coaching, chances are you've encountered a dreadfully painful situation like the one I'm about to tell you, right? So now they're like, well, yeah, I'm selling courses and coaching, but so again, why are they getting these? Ask yourself, why are they getting the email? And what can I say in the first sentence to remind them that they should take the next 5 minutes and read this email because they're going to get something out of it? So that's number one. Now, let me tell you something about pain. This is all factual telling, right? I would say painful situations in life like the one below. And then I would say, I was sitting there on the couch and it was my birthday. I had almost dug a hole into my knees. I was so nervous. In fact, I could see a small piece of blood coming through my pants. I quickly raised my hands up and shook them, trying to calm down, waiting for that phone call. You see, my father had just got out of prison, and he had promised that today, on this day, my birthday, he was going to take me out to dinner. I hadn't seen my dad in 5 years. See, you didn't say that here, Kevin. Well, I mean, you gotta dig and paint the pain. Was he in prison for a week or was he in prison for 5 years? Right? If he was in prison for a week, I'd be like, dude, I don't care. You're in prison for a week. Like, let's go to Hooters. Let's have beers, whatever. But if he was in prison for 5 years and you haven't seen him for 5 years, see, I hadn't seen my dad for 5 years. Almost forgot what he looked like. If it wasn't for the pictures I had of him, I may have forgot. And I feel terrible about that. Can you imagine what it's like to forget what your own father looks like? And there I sat, staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring. 5:30 came, nothing. 7 o'clock came, nothing. 8 o'clock came, nothing. See this right here. You don't need to say this. This is just some factual. You don't need to say that. You don't need to say that. I mean, nothing. I mean, you could say that again. And there I was, almost midnight, could barely keep my eyes open. Still, ... no phone call. And then I could say something, then you could say something like, you see, when you're a little kid, you often have a lot of hope. And people always tell you, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. And the thing about being a kid is you have to accept that because there's nothing you can do about it. You're just a kid. But when you're a full-grown adult, and on top of it, more importantly, when you're an entrepreneur and you're responsible for not only your life, but your employees' lives, well, now you can do something about it. You actually have a choice. And so how you react to these painful situations, that is what defines you, not the painful situations themselves. Terrible things happen to good people. But what makes you successful is not getting dealt a great hand of cards every time in life. It's how you play the hand you are dealt. Successful people do not have a full house every single day. They get dealt good hands and they get dealt bad hands. What sets them apart is their ability to play the hand the best they can and move on to the next. You see what I'm saying? Like, you got to paint that picture. If you're going to talk about poker, talk about playing poker. Don't just say something about a card game real quick and then talk about playing poker. Talk about sitting there, the dealer, smoke blowing in your face. It was kind of like the time I was at the casino and I was doing really well, and all of a sudden I got dealt a really bad deck of cards. And immediately as I looked at him, I felt the smoke from this guy's cigar blow in my face. I almost choked on it as I was looking at this terrible hand. Everything seemed great, but then it all came crashing down, especially since, I don't know, maybe at some point you had been bluffing and now you can't bluff or whatever. And so it was at that moment I had to make a decision. Do I bluff? Do I fold? What do I do? And these are the same decisions you must make in your business. You get what I'm saying? So it's good. And I like this part, right? But the story I would tell myself would be, yeah, I'm sad. My dad doesn't care about me. And I could wipe the tears away from my eyes and quickly let my... So like, let's see. Hold on, let me read the rest. Yeah, so I could say, see, here's the thing. I'm not clear how this connects. I get the puzzle piece thing, but see, here's the other thing. I think you're throwing too much in here. You're talking about a puzzle piece, you're talking about a card game, and you're talking about your birthday. That's too much. I would stick with one parable, and if you're going to relate it to something else, I would stick with the card game, because you're jumping from puzzle to card game. Instead of briefly providing two analogies, provide one analogy and put more effort into painting that picture of that analogy. That would be my suggestion. Anyway, Kevin, that's my suggestion for this copy. So let me see if we got any other ones. God, you guys posted super long stuff. Let's see what I got here. So, how 3 out-of-shape nerds in Silicon Valley are revolutionizing the way people practice yoga. So, this could, even though this is probably okay right now, just a word of warning. If Facebook decides to get crazy about thinking nerd is like a derogatory term or something, they may flag that eventually. That's kind of up in the air. How 3 out-of-shape nerds from Silicon Valley are revolutionizing the way people practice yoga. I'm just wondering what the Silicon Valley, how that contributes. So here's another thing you guys can do. And I would run either Grammarly or, if you want to go cheap, Hemingway app. I have a feeling this sentence might be hard to read. I could be wrong, but... Yeah, see, this is a hard to read sentence, right? So what I would do when you're done with your copy, paste it in the Hemingway app, and I would do how 3. See, now it's easy to read. And you don't lose anything. How 3 out-of-shape nerds are revolutionizing the way people practice yoga. I don't know why you need to talk about Silicon Valley there. That doesn't contribute to anything, and it just makes the sentence hard to read. Also, you cannot do... And guys, in part 2, I'm going to cover compliance. I'm not covering that yet, like in terms of ads, but you can't capitalize words. Facebook does not like it when you capitalize words, but we'll cover that in the compliance training. I'm teaching you guys this in layers, but no one saw this coming. But it's obvious, but it's the obvious next step. You see, yoga has become mainstream, but there are still tons of people who don't practice. They don't want to go to a studio, feel uncomfortable in that social situation, look like a beginner surrounded by yogis in cute clothes who can't bend like a pretzel. So they just don't practice. Or they try online yoga videos instead, but this doesn't offer any feed. So here's the other thing. Hold on, let me see something here real quick. Yeah, so this is one of the problems. Your whole copy is extremely hard to read. So even if it's technically good, if it's hard to read, no one's going to read it. I can always tell hard to read copy because I'm like struggling to read it. And then it makes me not really pay attention. Like this one, they don't want to go into a studio, feel uncomfortable in that social situation. Look, it's just too much. So they don't practice, or they try online yoga videos instead, but this doesn't offer any feedback, motivation to reach goals, or correction when you are doing a posture wrong, which Slow progress can lead to injury. With my yoga teacher, we have solved these problems. We offer online one-on-one private yoga sessions with expert Indian teachers. What does this mean exactly? You download my yoga teacher app, can schedule classes when you want. So this is what I would call a direct pitch. So this is probably problem, pain, solution. Will, are you following a certain copy format for this? Like, are you following what do they call that? The old school thing, problem, pain, solution. Let me know if he comments. It's like a 5-minute delay. He's not gonna, yeah. So my thing is with this, there's no offer here. You're literally, the offer is your product. You're going straight to the product. So you're selling directly, right? Yeah, the problem with copy like this is you're just directly selling and you're not really giving value. Whenever I direct sell, I like to give value. So what is it? From him or yeah. So my recommendation on this copy is, first of all, we have to understand who are we going after, right? Are we going after normal everyday people who want to lose weight? Are we going, because if we are, then we have to talk to those people. I am not clear here who you are talking to, because you're just saying how 3 out of shape nerds are revolutionizing the way people practice yoga. Are you going after yoga practitioners? Are you going after yoga instructors? No one saw this coming, but it's the obvious next step. You see, yoga has become mainstream, but there are still tons of people who don't practice. They don't want to go to a studio, feel comfortable. So here's how I might tell this. I might say something more like, how did Mary meet her fitness goals with yoga without ever going to a yoga studio, right? And then you say, one day, or you can say, I love yoga, and I know that yoga can help change people's lives. So one day I dragged my friend Mary, begrudgingly, to the yoga studio. We opened the door, she came in, and I could already tell she was very uncomfortable. I said, just give it a try. So there she was, wearing clothes that she never thought she would wear, standing in front of a bunch of people, all wearing the same silly spandex, doing postures that she thought she was never able to do. And she turned around and said, I can't do this. I told her, please, just give it one session. I promise you'll love it. Over the next hour, I could slowly see the look on Mary's face turn from fright and nervousness to confidence and bliss. And by the end of that session, she said to me, Will, I can't thank you enough for this. I absolutely love this and want to do it more. There's just one problem. I said, what's that? She's like, I can't make it to the yoga studio. I said, why not? She said, because, and then this is where you would insert whatever the biggest objection is. I have social anxiety. I work and the yoga studio isn't open while I work, or whatever that problem is. And that spawned an idea that would change both my life and thousands of other lives over the next 5 years. And that is why I created My Yoga Teacher. See, what I'm doing is I'm telling you a story of somebody who had a problem, a real flesh and blood person with skin and veins and blood and a mind. And I describe their situation, a situation that could happen to people that are reading your copy. And then I tell you why I created this product, because I had a vision to solve this problem, because I cared about Mary just like I care about you guys. And then I go in and tell you all the stuff you get. Go sign up for a free trial, whatever it is. But you're just barking at them. This is what I call bark copy. All right? Bark copy is where you just bark. You're just like, hey, this is good. This is what you get. This is cool. This is awesome stuff. Bark, bye, 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 bye. Bark, 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 bark. Right? So it's literally like, no one saw this coming. It's the obvious next step. They don't want to go to, they don't want to, you're telling them. You're telling them. You're barking at them. So let me tell you a quick story, Will. When I was a kid, I would always do what my dad said. I would never do what my mom said. Why? It wasn't because I didn't love my mom. It was because my dad knew how to persuade me. My mom didn't. Bottom line. So I remember one time I was in the kitchen and I opened underneath the kitchen sink. I opened the door and I would go mess around with the chemicals in there. And my mother would come in and scream at me. She'd say, don't do that. She would tell me, she would bark at me, don't do that. And what did it make me want to do? It made me want to go under there more. And it was a huge problem. And one day my mom says to my dad, you're his father. You got to fix this. So my dad comes in. My dad says, hey, do you know Jeffrey down the street? I said, no. He says, oh, that makes sense. Well, that's because Jeffrey just died. What? A kid on my street died? Yeah. You see that? Those chemicals under there? Yeah. You see, if you touch those, they're poisonous and they can kill you. And that's what happened to Jeffrey. He went under and he played with them and it got him sick. And he was sick for a couple weeks and he died. And the sad part is the day he died, he didn't get to see his parents. His parents were actually on their way to the hospital from work. He took a turn from the worst and he died. And I went, oh. And he goes, now what do you think you should do? Do you want to be like Jeffrey? I said, no. He's like, do you think you should go under there anymore? I said, no. And I never went under there again. It's because he hit me with copy that allowed me to hear something that's not telling me, not barking at me, but by me hearing it, I came to my own conclusion that this was the path for me, that this was my decision, right? Your copy should not tell them to think a certain way. It should tell them a story or give them value that lets them come to their own conclusion that they should do that thing. That's so much more powerful. And I never did it again. Now, oddly enough, this wasn't, to be quite honest with you, I'm not saying my dad is a better parent than my mom. I'm saying that my father had an unfair advantage. You see, my father was a professional copywriter in the 1980s and wrote tons of copy for radio commercials. He was the program director at multiple radio stations, and he won 7 Addy Awards, which you get for writing amazing copy and advertising in his field of radio. So it's not that he was a better parent. He just knew great copy, and that's what got me to do what he wanted. Boom. So this is bark copy. You're telling them what to think. You need to tell a story or give value or an illustration or a parable that allows them to come to their own conclusion themselves. So that's my, hope that helps, Will. That's my advice on that. So let's see, we can do one more. All right. So Shamika, it's the dreaded 3-letter word that every marketer, every business owner loves to hate, SEO. All right, that's potentially a good identifying pattern to interrupt. I'd have to read the rest of it and see what you're selling, but that's potentially good. Yet search engine optimization, or SEO, is one of the most important components of your online marketing toolkit. So again, I'm starting to hear bark copy, okay? You're telling him it's important. Why do I need to tell you it's important? Like, you're telling me. Why don't you tell me a story that allows me to come to that conclusion? Like, for instance, instead of search engine optimization, or SEO, is one of the most important components of your online marketing toolkit, why don't you say something like, almost every 7-figure marketer I know has a solid SEO plan. You just said the same thing, but instead of saying, hey, you listen to me, you think this way. Instead, you say, hey, here's this thing that happened. And at the end of it, they're like, I think this way because they heard, like, if I tell you there are 400 billionaires in the United States or the world, and 300 of them dropped out of college. What's more powerful? That or you don't need college? I don't think you need college. That's true. I don't think you need college at all. But if I say, you don't need college. Dude, what the hell? But if I say, did you know that out of 400 billionaires in the world, 300 dropped out of college? Guess what? Now you say to yourself, I don't need college. You said it, not me. When you say it, much more powerful. Okay? But this is why it's, I know it's a bit of a geeky subject. Again, I don't know. There's no reason to say that. That you're apologizing. Why are you apologizing? Don't apologize, okay? But why is it so important to pay attention to SEO? Can I just focus on social media and be done with it? Does SEO work in 2020 for my business? Again, this is just bleh. I mean, you're just you're asking. I mean, huh? Okay, I'll look at his in a second. These are some of the questions I get from my clients on a regular basis. So, for instance, for here, I might say, I just received a ton of emails last week, and they were all questions like this. And then you put the questions, right? It just seems more real, you know? The reality is, with the soaring advertising costs, especially on social media, there's never been a better time for a solid... Again, you're barking. You're barking. You're telling. Whether you run an online, offline coaching, consulting, or brick and mortar business, a well thought out SEO strategy can greatly benefit your business and bring in leads, sales, and customers. That's what I feel like right now. You're just telling me, hey, it's important. Hey, it's good. Hey, you should have it. It's barking. You're barking. Okay? So I put together a detailed guide on how SEO can impact your business. It's one of my longest posts I've done to date. I wouldn't say that, especially in a world where people have a limited attention span. I was so excited when I was writing it. My aim was to create an article around 2,000 words, but I ended up being a 4,400 word article, epic post that you will never have time to read. So you're literally telling them that. So instead of letting them get immersed in your post, you're telling them it's going to be a really big chore. So that's bad. Click here to read. In the article, I reveal some of my tricks that I use to rank for competitive keywords. And in a few weeks' time, I'm doing a case study on this very article, how I got traffic to this post. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoy reading this. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Shamika, terrible copy, but I'm going to fix it. So listen, you want to do something more like, all right, for instance, you got to find a statistic for this. Something like, do you hate money? That's what do you hate money? That's where my millionaire friend, that's what my millionaire friend John said to me last week. You see, John not only has built a 7-figure business, but he has a network of people that all own 7 to 8-figure businesses. And I was sitting down to tea with him one time when I asked him a question. I said, do I really need SEO? And that's when John said, do you hate money? He then went on to explain to me how not only does every single one of his millionaire friends have a solid SEO plan, but if you have a business and you're not at least doing something to help your search engine rankings, there's a ton of money on the table sitting in front of you that you simply aren't reaching out and getting. In fact, he told me the story of one of his friends that had $1 million company, but for some reason the owner was cheap and he didn't want to look into SEO. But when John finally convinced him, over the next year, he went from a $2 million company to a $4 million. He doubled his sales simply because he took what was already working and allowed new eyeballs to see it. New eyeballs that were searching for exactly what he was selling on Google. It was at that moment I decided to become an expert at this SEO thing. And over the next 5 years, I helped over 100 clients, whatever, blah, 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 blah. What I've done is I've taken a look back at those 5 years, and I've put together a case study of the top 5 things you need to do in order to instantly increase your revenue using search engine optimization. Click here to download that case study. Now, again, I've told them to care about SEO without barking at them or telling them to care. I've told them a narrative, and I've even said, why are you getting this cheat sheet? You're getting it because I spent the last 5 years going over all my successful clients and identifying the top 5 things. That is something I would download. I don't even remember what you were offering here. What are you offering? A blog post and all you could talk about was how long it was, which nobody cares about. Yeah, and a detailed guide on how SEO can impact your business. See, this, again, offer is something wrong with the damn offer, okay? Nobody cares about a detailed guide on how SEO can impact your business. Now, a case study of the top 5 things that worked for over 100 clients in multiple industries, that's a good offer. See, this is why you guys, honestly, to be honest with you, stop buying $49 offers and start buying $4,900 offers and having a coach. It doesn't have to be me. You don't have to give me money, but you need somebody to look at your stuff and fix it, not give you a system that you'll then just mess up, all right? This stuff's hard, man. You want to build a multi-million-dollar business, you need help. I got help. Everybody I know that has built $1 million business has got help. I think he commented, did he? So Tony's, I'll go through this one real quick. What a cancer diagnosis taught me about weight loss. After hearing the doctor tell me over the phone the cancer was back, I completely lost it. That's good. How could this be? Did you write this after? I feel like he wrote this after he was watching earlier. I could be wrong. How could this be? It was only 9 months ago, laying in my hospital bed on massive amounts of pain meds, that the surgeon walked into my hospital room to tell me the good news. There were no signs of cancer in the lymph nodes, he said. And the really good news is that the likelihood of having any recurrence is less than 10%. Less than 10%. Now, those were the odds I can bank on. And do you know what I remember most about that moment? I can vividly remember the smile that showed up on my wife's face when the doctor told us, this is good. Can you find out if Tony wrote this himself? Yeah, but did he write this after watching the previous stuff? Because this is good. Pure joy. Fast forward 9 months to the dreaded it's back phone call. After catching my breath, the thing I remember most about this moment was thinking, how am I going to tell my wife? She does not deserve this. Oh, this is good. But something else happened in this moment too. I had some clarity around why I got cancer in the first place. It was pretty crazy looking back. The clarity I received in this moment was so profound that I believe it's the only reason I am here today writing this almost 17 years later. What was it? Extreme ownership. Let me explain. I literally felt the weight of responsibility shift 100% onto my shoulders for the position I'm in. I own the fact that I was the reason I got cancer, and I pointed the finger directly at myself for why it came back. This may sound crazy to some, and here's what I hear from most people I tell this story to. It was your genetics. Blame your parents. It's just bad luck. As nice as this sounds, it's just an out. It's just a way to make ourselves feel better about our bad situations, and ultimately a way to just point the finger away from yourself. The biggest problem with this thought pattern is that it takes away your control. My first bout was, so like for instance, some of this is really good. Some of it, I always say it with as little words as possible, but never be so short that it sacrifices your message. I think you could take some of this out and shorten it a little bit, but it's still really good. Biggest problem with this thought pattern is that it takes away your control. My first bout with cancer was a total disaster because I never took control of my situation. So like you just said the same thing twice. So I wouldn't say it twice. I'd say it once. Instead, I blamed bad genetics and I gave all the control to my doctors to get me better. I cringed looking back and remembering I was drinking a lot of alcohol, eating fast food almost daily, and just going through the motions of showing up for appointments. Of course, my cancer came back. So what did I do the second time around? I stayed away from the doctors. All right, so first of all, I hope this is email copy because you're really pushing the line here on Facebook copy. I hope it's for email. And I took the cancer bull by the horns and let my loved ones know that I was calling the shots and that whatever happened, it was 100% on me. You see, my beliefs changed literally in a moment. And to this whole day, I wholeheartedly believe that any situation you are in as an adult is created by the person. So right now we're being very, very redundant. Like you could say all this in like a paragraph. I mean, it's good, but it's super repetitive because you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. You're just rephrasing it. You don't need to do that. You can just say it once. Just say it well. I hired every health coach, out of network MD, neuropath, nutritionist, medication guru, yoga practitioner I could find was willing to help me on my journey. Over 2.5 years, I spent gobs of money I didn't have, extended a ton of energy that I'll never get back, and spent countless hours becoming the healthiest person with cancer that any doctor had ever seen, for real. In fact, I managed my cancer that, if left untreated, was supposed to kill me in about 6 months for over 2 years before agreeing to chemo. I say this not to brag, but the point is we are all capable of way more than we ever imagined. I was able to lose 30 something of body fat, mostly belly, 30 pounds. I significantly improved my fitness, and every health marker a doctor could test was off the charts. And you know the amazing thing? That was almost 17 years ago. I like that. That was almost 17 years ago. I've been able to maintain my health, my fitness, and my body fat to less than 10% the entire time. I never counted a calorie, stayed away from traditional gyms, and I've gone all in on coaching others for 20 years for their own health, fitness, and nutrition. If you'd like to learn more about how you can do the same, I put together a free training outlining the exact methods that have served me for the last 17 years. I'm holding nothing back, and I actually tried to keep it short at only 55 minutes. You can check it out here. You can watch it right away, and I also send the link via email to view later if needed. Also, if you have an inspiring story, I'd love to hear it. Comment below. So this is really good. Couple things. It's very redundant and repetitive. You had it, and then you sort of started repeating things. You could literally have just said, the thing was, I was eating bad, I was gaining weight, and honestly, of course, I got cancer back. So over the next 6 months, I decided to change all my habits. And I hired every single doctor, neuropath, this, that, ever, to really study what I could do naturally to fix this. And after changing those habits, I noticed that I had lost X amount of weight. But see, if this is a Facebook ad, you can't say I lost this many pounds. You could say something like, I looked in the mirror and I looked like I did when I was 18. You remember when you were 18, strong, lean, you know, I couldn't believe it. I go back to the doctor, and I don't know if you mentioned this, did the cancer return, or did you still have the cancer? I don't know where that. Oh, then he agreed to chemo. Okay. So how does the chemo work in there? Because now I might say, well, that's like, maybe that's why you survived, because of chemo, you know? But so there's a little messaging issue here. Like, I would probably narrow it down to one thing. Like, I might even go like, my goal was to change my habits so that I could naturally heal myself, but and simply get rid of this disease, or simply, you know, not have cancer anymore. But as a added benefit, I also blew away my fitness goals. In fact, I looked better than I ever had. And that's why I took the next X years to coach others on how to do the same. And I've just packed the biggest habit-changing behaviors in a 155-minute presentation to show you how I did it. So here's the other thing. You can shorten it, but the other thing is compliance, which I'm going to talk about in part 2, especially with diseases. So here's what I do with compliance, how I stay so up to date on it. What I do is I read the current up-to-date Facebook compliance when I'm going to do a new ad. I'll read that crap every week, right? And I'll look at what their current rules are. And then I'll just find a way to say the same thing without breaking the rule. And what this is very simple. So let's say you can't say, let's say you can't talk about diagnosing or curing a disease. Well, how do I promote this, right? So you could say something like, I went to the doctor and he told me the dreaded news. You have cancer, right? So I said that the doctor diagnosed me, all right? So that's number one. I told the story of the doctor telling me that. Instead of saying, like I knew I had cancer, or, again, you have to be very careful with this. I'll bring up current Facebook documentation on the next thing and kind of show you how to look at their current documentation and decipher it, because it changes constantly. Policy changes constantly. So part of being compliant is deciphering current policy, which that's a whole nother conversation, which I'll get into in part 2. But for instance, I'm just trying to find one part here that I can mention. So like I've been able to maintain my health, my fitness, and my body fat to less than 10% body fat the entire time. So less than 10% body fat, that's pushing it, right? So I might say, like I said before, I was in better shape than when I was 18 years old, right? Because that's saying it without saying it. Got it? I was able to lose 30 pounds of body fat. Again, I was able to have, my abs looked better than when I was 25. Okay. But this is better. I significantly improved my fitness. Every health marker I tested for was off the charts. So what I'll do is on the part 2, we'll do health. We'll do money making. We'll do some of the more edgy concepts. I'll bring up current Facebook policy and I'll show you how to decipher it. Because if I teach you today how to be compliant, I give you a fish. But if I teach you how to fish, then you'll be able to catch all the fish you want. And that's one of the keys, is you have to look at current Facebook policy and then know how to decipher it. And that's what I'm going to cover on the compliance. Because if I tell you what to say, what not to say, that might be great for today, but next month it might change. Okay, so it's better if I bring up current policy and I help you decode it. Does that make sense? So I'll have to remember this one for the compliance. All right. Anyway, so that right there, guys, is story time with Dan. All right. So to sum this up, what you want to do is when you say something, you want to paint a picture. Okay. You want to paint a picture and not just state it. Think of how you would describe it. Close your eyes. Think back to that moment. Take a breath and think about how you would describe being in that moment. And also, do not tell people. Do not bark. Tell people a story that leads them to the conclusion that you want them to have.